Welcome back, everyone. It feels especially fitting to be diving into this topic today. March 8th, International Women's Day. We're
Yeah.
tackling something that I think a lot of us have experienced, but maybe
Yeah.
haven't fully understood. Envy,
Right.
specifically among women.
It's
Right.
a timely and complex subject for sure.
Before anyone thinks we're here to bash anyone, let me be clear. This isn't about judgment at all.
No.
We're so lucky to have all these sources today.
Yeah.
We have relationship advice from Your Tango. We have a psychology-focused article from Public Square magazine.
Okay.
We can have some insights from the Headspace app.
Wow.
So our mission today is to really explore the why behind this emotion. See if maybe we can find some ways to deal with it.
I think that's a great mission. I'm ready to unpack all of this.
Okay, so Your Tango jumps right into the deep end with 20 things a woman will do when she's jealous of you.
Okay.
Some are pretty obvious, but a few signs is so subtle, they kind of blew my mind.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like have you ever noticed how someone might downplay your successes?
Uh-huh.
Like they're almost trying to convince themselves it's not a big deal?
Yeah. I mean, what's so fascinating about that is it could be completely unconscious.
Oh, wow.
The person experiencing the envy may not even realize they're doing it.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a way of protecting their own ego, perhaps stemming from a sense of inadequacy.
So it's not necessarily malicious, it's more like a self-defense mechanism.
Exactly. And that's why understanding the underlying psychology is so important.
Right.
If we can recognize these patterns, both in ourselves and other,
Yeah.
we can start to address the root causes.
Makes total sense. And you know what? That reminds me of something from the Public Square magazine article, Envy, the Wall Between Women.
Okay.
They talk about envy as a symptom of a scarcity mindset.
Okay.
They even use this super relatable example. A kid throws a tantrum because her brother got the donut that she wanted.
The classic donut debacle.
I know, right?
It perfectly illustrates how this belief that there's not enough to go around can take root really on. And unfortunately, that mindset often carries over into adulthood.
Oh, for sure. So how does this donut scarcity play out in, say, our careers or relationships?
Well, think about the messages we're bombarded with constantly. Be the best, get ahead, achieve success.
Yeah.
Whether it's about our jobs, our relationships, or even just our appearance, we're often pitted against each other.
Yeah.
It creates this feeling that someone else's win is automatically our loss.
So that's where the envy comes in.
Precisely. Instead of celebrating each other's achievements, we start to see them as threats.
Right.
It's like we're all fighting for a piece of a very small pie instead of realizing that maybe we can each bake our own pies. Or better yet, collaborate on a giant pie feast.
I love that analogy. Collaboration over competition.
Yes.
But it makes you wonder, is this scarcity mindset purely societal?
Right.
Or is there something deeper at play?
Ooh, that's where things get really intriguing. The Headspace article brings up some fascinating research suggesting that jealousy might actually be tied to our ovulation cycles.
Hold on, you're telling me our hormones could be making us envious?
It's not quite that simple, but there's evidence to suggest that during ovulation,
Okay.
women might be subconsciously more attuned to potential rivals.
Wow.
From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. Ovulation is all about maximizing the chances of reproduction. So it stands to reason that our biology might make us more sensitive to anything that could jeopardize that.
So it's like a primal instinct kicking in. But instead of saber-toothed tigers, we're worried about other women getting ahead.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
And this ties back to the scarcity mindset we were discussing. If our biology is already priming us to see other women as potential threats,
Yeah.
it can be even harder to shake off that feeling that there's not enough to go around.
So we've got societal pressures and maybe even our own biology working against us. It's like a double whammy of envy.
Yeah.
No wonder it's such a tricky emotion to deal with.
It certainly adds another layer of complexity, but the good news is understanding these factors can empower us to make more conscious choices.
Okay, so we've talked about the why. I'm really curious about the what now.
Yeah.
Do our sources offer any solutions for dealing with this green-eyed monster?
They absolutely do.
Okay.
And some of them might surprise you.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
For instance, the Feminine Woman article suggests that one approach is to actually befriend the person you're feeling envious of.
Befriend them. Isn't that a little counterintuitive?
It might seem that way.
Yeah.
But their reasoning is that by getting to know the person better,
Okay.
you might start to see them as a whole person with their own struggles and insecurities.
Uh-huh.
This can help to break down the idealized image you might have built up in your head
Right.
and make them feel less like a threat.
That's an interesting take. But what if befriending the person isn't possible?
Right.
Or their behavior is just too toxic? What then?
That's a valid concern, and in those situations, setting firm boundaries and prioritizing your own well-being is crucial.
Yeah.
You can't control someone else's behavior, but you can control how you react to it and how much access you give them to your life.
So it's about protecting your own energy and not getting sucked into their negativity.
Exactly. And even if befriending the person isn't feasible, the broader point about female support still stands.
Okay.
When we build each other up, celebrate each other's successes, and offer support during tough times,
Yeah.
it creates a culture of abundance rather than scarcity.
I love that instead of tearing each other down, we can actually use our collective power to lift each other up.
Right, and that's a message that feels particularly relevant on International Women's Day.
Yes.
It's a day to celebrate the achievements of women, but also to recognize that we're stronger together. When we support each other, we can create a world where every woman has the opportunity to thrive.
Beautifully said. And speaking of thriving, our source from Headspace takes a more internal approach to dealing with envy. They emphasize mindfulness, gratitude, and focusing on others' happiness. Do you think those practices can really make a difference?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mindfulness helps us become more aware of our thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
which is the first step in changing them.
Uh-huh.
Gratitude allows us to appreciate what we have rather than dwelling on what we lack, fostering a sense of contentment.
Right.
And focusing on others' happiness helps us break free from the self-centered thinking that often fuels envy.
So it's about shifting our perspective from me versus them to we're all in this together.
That's a great way to put it. And you know what? There's actually some scientific evidence to back this up. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude and compassion
Really?
can actually rewire our brains, making us more empathetic and less prone to negative emotions like envy.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So by focusing on these internal practices, we can not only manage our own envy, but also contribute to a more positive and supportive environment for everyone.
Precisely. It's like that ripple effect you mentioned earlier. Small individual actions can create waves of change that extend far beyond ourselves.
This is all incredibly insightful. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore.
You're absolutely right, but I think we've laid a solid foundation for understanding the complexities of envy. And hopefully we've given our listeners some food for thought.
I'm sure they're already brimming with ideas. And speaking of ideas, I'm curious to dive deeper into those actionable strategies from Headspace
Okay.
and see how we can actually apply them in our daily lives.
I'm game if you are. Let's see if we can turn this green-eyed monster into a force for good.
I love it. Let's do it.
It's interesting how we often frame envy as this purely negative emotion. But what if, like you said, we could actually harness its energy for something positive?
That's what I'm really curious about. Headspace talks about using mindfulness to become more aware of those envious feelings. Do you think that's the first step?
Absolutely. Instead of trying to suppress or ignore those feelings, mindfulness encourages us to acknowledge them without judgment.
Okay.
It's like saying, hey, I see you envy. I know you're there, but I'm not going to let you control me.
So it's about creating some space between ourselves and the emotion.
Exactly. And once we've acknowledged it, we can start to explore it. What triggered this feeling? What need is it trying to signal? Often envy is a sign that we're longing for something recognition, success, connection.
Right.
And by understanding that longing, we can start to find healthier ways to fulfill it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like envy is a messenger trying to tell us something important about ourselves.
I love that analogy. And sometimes that message might be as simple as, hey, you're feeling a little insecure right now. What can you do to boost your self-confidence?
Yeah.
Or it might be more complex, like you're craving deeper connection with other women. How can you cultivate more supportive relationships?
Right. And that's where those other Headspace strategies come in, right? Gratitude and focusing on others' happiness.
Exactly. Gratitude helps us shift our focus from what we lack to what we have, which can be a powerful antidote to envy. It's about appreciating the good in our own lives, even when it feels like everyone else is winning.
And focusing on others' happiness. How does that help with envy?
Well, envy often stems from a sense of comparison and competition.
Yeah.
We see someone else's success or happiness as a threat to our own. But when we genuinely celebrate others' wins, it expands our capacity for joy. It helps us break free from that zero-sum mentality and realize that there's enough happiness to go around.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. When we support each other's happiness, we all benefit.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's interesting to think about this in the context of International Women's Day.
Yeah,
Instead of seeing other women as rivals, what if we saw them as collaborators, as cheerleaders,
right.
as sources of inspiration?
It's a powerful shift in perspective, and it aligns with what the feminine woman was saying about female support being an antidote to envy.
Absolutely. When we surround ourselves with women who celebrate our successes and offer encouragement during tough times, it creates a buffer against those envious feelings. It's like having a whole team of cheerleaders rooting for you.
That sounds amazing. But let's be realistic. Not all women are going to be supportive all the time. We've all encountered those frenemies who seem to take pleasure in our misfortunes.
That's true. And it's important to recognize that not every relationship is going to be a source of support.
Right.
Sometimes we need to distance ourselves from people who consistently drain our energy
Yeah.
or trigger those envious feelings.
So it's about being selective with who we let into our inner circle.
Precisely. And it's not about being judgmental or excluding people.
Right.
It's about prioritizing our own well-being and surrounding ourselves with people who lift us up, not tear us down.
If we do find ourselves feeling envious, what are some practical things we can do to shift our mindset?
Well, besides mindfulness, gratitude, and focusing on others' happiness,
Yeah.
there are a few other strategies that can be helpful. One is to reframe comparison as inspiration.
Okay.
Instead of seeing someone else's success as a threat, ask yourself, what can I learn from their journey? What steps can I take to achieve something similar?
So it's about turning envy into a motivator, a catalyst for growth.
Exactly. And another helpful strategy is to focus on your own unique strengths and contributions.
Uh-huh.
We each have something special to offer the world, and by celebrating our own individuality, we become less susceptible to comparison and envy.
That makes so much sense. It's like we were saying earlier, we can all bake our own delicious pies, each with its own unique flavor and style.
I love that. And remember, the goal isn't to completely eradicate envy. It's a normal human emotion, and it can actually be a sign that we're striving for something more.
Right.
The key is to manage it in a healthy way and use it as a springboard for growth and self-discovery.
So it's about transforming envy from a destructive force into a constructive one.
You got it. And I think that's a powerful message to carry with us, especially on International Women's Day. Imagine the incredible things we could accomplish if we channeled our energy into supporting each other, celebrating our differences, and working together to create a world where every woman can shine.
That's a beautiful vision and one that I think we could all strive towards. But for now, I think my brain needs a moment to process all of this amazing information. We've covered a lot of ground, from the subtle signs of envy to the evolutionary roots,
Yeah,
and even some practical strategies for turning it into something positive.
it's been quite a journey, but I have a feeling our deep dive isn't over yet. We still have those actionable strategies from Headspace to explore. Are you ready to put these insights into practice?
Absolutely. Let's take those mindful steps towards a more supportive and empowered world. Okay, so we've explored the why behind envy, from societal pressures to maybe even our own biology.
Right.
Now let's get practical. Headspace gives us some tools to work with, right?
They do. And, it struck me how some of their advice actually mirrors what we saw in the other articles. Like, remember the feminine woman suggesting we befriend the person we're envious of?
Yeah.
Headspace talks about cultivating compassion,
Okay.
not just for others, but for ourselves too.
Ooh, I like that connection. So instead of beating ourselves up for feeling envious,
Right.
we can try to understand where it's coming from.
Exactly. Often envy is a sign that we're not valuing our own strengths.
Right.
It's that comparison trap snapping shut. So Headspace says we should practice gratitude.
Okay.
Not just for what we have, but for who we are. What are our unique gifts? What makes us awesome?
It's like we're creating a mental highlight reel of our own accomplishments instead of just watching everyone else's right.
That's a great way to think about it, and it ties into something else. Headspace emphasizes
Okay.
celebrating others' happiness.
Right.
When we're secure in ourselves, we're less threatened by someone else's success.
Yeah.
We can actually feel joy for them.
But isn't that easier said than done? I mean, let's be real. Sometimes those envious pangs hit hard.
Sure.
Like, I see someone getting the promotion I wanted,
Uh-huh.
and bam, instant envy monster.
I hear you. Those feelings are totally valid. But here's where mindfulness comes in. Headspace says we should notice those thoughts without getting swept away by them.
Okay.
It's like watching clouds drift by.
Uh-huh.
You see them, acknowledge them,
Yeah.
but you don't have to grab onto each one.
So it's about creating that space between the emotion and our reaction.
Exactly. And in that space, we have a choice. We can
Right.
either spiral down the envy rabbit hole,
Right.
or we can use those feelings as information.
Okay.
What is this envy telling me about my own desires? What steps can I take towards my goals?
Okay, so we're using mindfulness to observe the envy gratitude, to appreciate ourselves,
Right.
and then channeling that energy into action.
You got it. And that action piece is crucial.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from passive comparison to active creation. Instead of dwelling on what others have,
hmm
we start focusing on what we want to build in our own lives.
It's like that person's success becomes a roadmap, not a roadblock. It shows us what's possible.
I love that. And it reminds me of something from the Public Square magazine article.
Uh-huh.
They talked about the biblical story of Rachel and Leah,
Right.
initially consumed by jealousy,
Yeah.
but eventually finding their own paths to fulfillment. It wasn't about having the same things,
Right.
but about valuing their unique gifts.
It's like they each baked their own amazing pie, different but equally delicious, right?
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it. We don't all have to be striving for the same definition of success or happiness. It's about finding what truly lights us up and going for it wholeheartedly.
This is all so empowering. I feel like we've gone from dissecting the problem of envy to actually having tools to overcome it.
I agree. And, it feels particularly relevant on International Women's Day. Imagine if instead of feeling threatened by each other's achievements, we celebrated them. What if we used our collective wisdom and experience to support each other's growth?
Wow, what a world that would be. It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
When we focus on uplifting each other, everyone benefits.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for anyone listening who's ever felt that pang of envy, remember this. It's okay to feel those feelings, but don't let them define you. Use those feelings as fuel to create something amazing in your own life. And remember, you are not alone. There are people out there, women especially, who want to see you succeed and who are ready to celebrate your wins with you.
That's such an inspiring message. It feels like we've come full circle from understanding the darker side of envy to uncovering its potential for positive change.
I'm so glad you feel that way. It's been a truly insightful journey, and I hope our listeners feel equipped to navigate those envious moments with a little more grace and a lot more self-love.
And who knows, maybe with a little mindfulness, gratitude, and a whole lot of support, we can turn those pangs of envy into a force for good, not just for ourselves, but for all women.
Here's to a future where we celebrate each other's successes and create a world where every woman can thrive. Thanks for digging deep with us today.